Welcome to another Queer Money follow-up. First of all, I got a question for you. What do you think of the new camera angle? So we've been investing in some equipment. We already had the podcasting equipment, obviously, from the Queer Money podcast, but we've been investing in a little bit of equipment so that the YouTube channel looks a little bit more professional. So we'd love it what your thoughts are on the new angle. Instead of us looking up at the camera, it's actually at our eye level. So
easy for you to say.
Yeah, exactly. So got a question for you. What do you think about most? When you look back over the day or the week or over the month, what is it that you think about the most? And the reason why I asked that question is back on Queer Money episode 43, which this is Queer Money follow-up episode 43.
Fancy how that works out.
Right. But for the Queer Money podcast, episode 43, we were talking about how to attract more money into your life. And because it seems to be a question or constant discussion or comment that people have. So that's what that particular episode was about how to attract more money into your life. We're taking a little bit of a different angle on it this time.
Yeah, actually, this is the second of a two-part series where we answered Dale's question about how he gets his husband or partner on the same financial page with him. His partner had $16,000 in credit card debt. They had decent credit scores, but Dale felt that this was holding them back financially and relationally. So we had a two-part series. In the second part, we talked about what are you willing to do to overcome your current circumstances?
Yeah.
And that sort of parlayed into a question about reality. This is sort of so. Just to kind of give you a heads up here, we're going to do a talk about creating the life that you'd love, but it's going to be kind of a circuitous path.
Which, by the way, John loves that word, circuitous. He uses it a lot.
We're going to kind of go the gay geek route, but before we do that, we're going to go the gay diva route. Because what actually inspired this particular Queer Money follow-up is a quote that we shared on episode 43 of the Queer Money podcast. From Liza Minnelli, of all people.
Yeah.
and she's known for saying, reality is something that you rise above. And this kind of got us on a discussion thinking about, well, what is reality? So Dale and his husband had this $16,000 in credit card debt, and they were trying to figure out what to do with it.
His husband had the $16,000 credit card debt. Dale was moving ahead financially, but his husband, or his partner, was dragging them down financially.
Yeah. So his partner, yeah, exactly. They had $16,000 of credit card debt in their relationship, and so the topic of this particular podcast episode was about, as David alluded, about how to attract more money into your life, or what are you going to do differently going forward so you can have the hopes and dreams that we talked about in episode 42.
Right, which kind of reminds me of when I look back at the queer community, when did we rise above our reality? I think of 1969 in the Stonewall riots. Queer progress took a huge leap when those folks in San Francisco or in New York, but also what's happening in San Francisco, they decided that they did not like the reality that they were seeing. They were tired of being abused by the police, by people around them, by not being respected for who they were, and they rose up and they did and said something about it. I think also of marriage equality and how it was something that was a long time coming, but it was really the efforts and the push towards making it something that people were talking about that actually resulted in that change, right? None of that, the progress that we've made as a queer community hasn't happened just by happenstance, by accident. I will say that there are a lot of bystanders in the queer community who have maybe think it happens by happenstance or by chance because they themselves are not participating in it. But the progress really happens because people do something about the reality that they have. They want to change that reality.
But the question is, and then we're going to kind of go down this quantum physics rabbit hole, when does that reality come about? Did it come about? And did it only start coming about when Martha P. Washington threw that first brick, or was there more going on before that? And this kind of gets you down the whole rabbit hole of what is reality. And we're learning from science more and more every day, that reality isn't what we thought it was. I mean, going all the way back to the 17th century, Isaac Newton was telling us that light was made up of particles. And then English physicist Thomas Young in 1801 came out and said, no, I just did this double slit experiment, and it actually shows that light is both a combination of particle and wave. It demonstrates both properties. If you're not familiar with the double slit experiments, it's a very interesting experiment that has been replicated numerous times. We encourage you to go to YouTube to research the double slit experiment. But basically what it did is it said that based on what we thought, light isn't particle. It's actually either particle or a wave. And if you go further down the rabbit hole, light actually shows to be either particle or a wave, contingent on whether or not it's actually being observed.
Yeah. It's kind of like that whole, if it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, it's a duck, right? But now we're seeing that sometimes with reality, what we thought was a duck is actually something different.
Something different, right? And that's of course we're talking about the 17th and 18th century, but we're having more discoveries even today. It was just a couple of years ago. If you want to go further down this rabbit hole, do some Googling or YouTubing of quantum entanglement theory, and it's this theory that to what extent can one particle affect another, and there's theories, if you go down the multiverse theory, that is it possible for a particle in one universe to affect a particle in a theoretical other universe? Well, scientists just a couple of years ago have been able now to demonstrate, to actually show that a particle can affect another particle up to 745 miles away. And so the suspicion is that could go even further. If you want to read a great book, David and I are fans of Conscious, A Brief Guide to the Fundamental Mysteries of the Mind. If you want to read that, it's by Annika Harris. It explains it very succinctly and much more eloquently than what we did.
Yeah.
But this kind of goes down the whole path of what is reality.
Right. And so now we're going to kind of pull this back to the reality for gay men, especially for gay men. We ask that question, what is reality? And oftentimes reality is based on us, right? So there's this quote that John loves by Anais Nin, and we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And it's very interesting. I'm curious, do you feel like that is the truth with the world today? I mean, I see lots of examples of this. For example, when you look at even one of the biggest observable ways is the polarization of politics in this country. Right. What one group of people thinks the reality of the world is completely different than what another group of people thinks the reality of the world is, and they're observing the exact same thing, right? So if they're observing the exact same thing and two people think it's completely different, what is the difference? Well, it's they themselves.
Right, how they're seeing it.
Right. So I guess the question would be then, how do gay men see themselves? How do gay men see their own reality? And I think it's kind of interesting. We observe the political partisanship or the divide in this country based on people's actions and what they say and do.
Or tweet.
Yeah. And I think it's pretty easy to then basically say, what are gay men? What are queer men thinking about themselves? And unfortunately, it seems like there seems to be a lot of negativity in the queer community around what people think of themselves. They oftentimes think that they're not good enough, right? They think that their life is hard. Things are always going to be difficult for them. But then you have queer men who their lives are completely different because they have a completely different outlook on life.
Right. So yeah, those perceptions can't necessarily be contingent on whether or not you're a gay man. There's got to be more to it. And this is David and I went for a walk yesterday, and I was kind of debating about what it is that gay men are thinking and what am I thinking and how critical are our thoughts actually. And what was very weird, what got me on this particular tangent was right before we went for our walk, I had read that Oprah Winfrey is interviewing Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and I thought to myself, well, that's useless information. I went to, I got this from a major publication and one of the highest ranked publications month after month for news. And so I saw this on that particular publication above the fold, and I thought, in this walk, I'm like, well, that's just useless information. Why is that above the fold information? I mean, they're not even in line, really legitimately in line for a succession for being king and queen, because there are so many people who are now ahead of them. So why is this a story that's on above the fold? And then that kind of got me on the whole thought of, well, if this is what the media is constantly bombarding us with, this kind of trivial news on top of all the other stuff that it bombards us with. We can just think back to the Trump era and how acrimonious that was. If these are the things that we're being bombarded with, and that's compounded on top of these inherent thoughts that we bring with us to adulthood, that I'm not good enough, that life is hard, LGBTQ people will never be equal, whatever, money's evil. How is that manifesting in our, what kind of, we're thinking about waves and particles. So we're thinking about, at a quantum level, vibration. As Einstein said, everything is vibration. So if this is the information we're soaking in, and this is the vibration that we're being brought up in and we're emitting in adulthood, what is it we're attracting? What is the reality that we ourselves are creating?
Right. It kind of reminds me of, I see this on a regular basis where people take a break from news, take a break from social media.
Yeah.
They detox themselves because they realize that there is a toxic event or a toxic
toxicity.
Well, there's a toxic infection that happens when they watch the news or they participate in social media. It's one of the reasons why so many people are leaving Facebook, is because they just see this constant barrage of fighting and negativity and all this bickering between people, and somebody says something good and somebody has something negative to say about it, right? So there's this constant, and so if people feel like that outside is having that kind of negative impact on them, what is the inside having, right? So I like the quote from Gandhi, where Gandhi says that your thoughts create your words create your actions create your destiny. And so really, if we aren't careful with what we think about, our life will end up what we think about, right? I mean, it's kind of like the person who doesn't think they're going to win the race is not going to win the race, right?
They've already electively pretty much opted out of the race.
Right.
That's their thought, right? And we've talked about this before. Usain Bolt never goes to a race thinking that he's going to lose.
Right.
He's very, very, very bold about it. He's talking about he's going to win it, and every single time he's going to break a record practically.
Right.
So the level of vibration that he's emitting, the reality that he's creating for himself, the thoughts that he's thinking are completely different than what a lot of, I think, other folks think.
Right. So I guess the questions, I mean, you have to think back to look at all of the inventions that we use today, the technology, the iPhone, the computer, the Tesla, all of the cars, all of that began with somebody thinking about it, right? It all started out as a thought. And it was because that person or persons persistently thought about that, how they could do it, then they took that into action, right? So everything starts with a thought, then the thought can become reality if we do something about it.
Right. But I think conceptually, people get that. But with those particular examples, those provide more tangible, concrete results, right? I can touch the iPhone. I can touch my MacBook. I can touch a Tesla. Maybe can't afford a Tesla, but I can touch it.
Right.
But that as we're talking about earlier with the double split experiment and quantum entanglement, that also parlays itself into the quantum level. And so not only is it producing tangible things, but what circumstances are we creating by our thoughts? How are we responding? How are we feeling to our thoughts? How are we responding to our thoughts? And then ultimately, what are the results that we're creating, all precipitated by our thoughts? And I don't know that this is this isn't a question that the queer community, specifically gay men, are having. I mean, we research this stuff ad nauseum, and we don't see that our community is having this discussion. But we are often discussing what the end results of that whole line of thinking, or from our feelings to our thoughts to our actions. We're always talking about what the results are, but we never actually talk. We don't talk a whole lot, and certainly not enough about, how did we get there? And I agree that there are circumstances that are outside of our control that we have to adapt to, but are we just compounding the negativity of those circumstances? And are we, to some extent, almost creating some of those circumstances?
Right. Well, I think about this one a lot. There are a lot of gay men who are lonely, and they are looking for a relationship. But then you listen to how they talk about themselves and the fact that they're not in a relationship, right? Let me ask you, as a queer person, well, any person, right? If you are looking for someone to get into a relationship, you're looking for a relationship, are you attracted to someone who is the Debbie Downer about themselves or about the fact that they can't get into a relationship, right? If you are acquainted with someone and they have an acquaintance that is single, and you meet that person for the first time and they're complaining about how no one likes me, I can't find the right man, I'm just going to be single all my life. Are you attracted to a person like that? So that's what that person is thinking about for themselves. Then they start to express it, right? When they express it, right, that they're basically sending that energy out into the universe. No one likes me. I'm not good enough. I'm not going to ever be happy. I'm never going to find the right man. Well, then everyone else who's within earshot of that is going to pick up on that energy, right? And
well, that's the thing. I don't think it's not even them. It's not even whether or not they say that, they express that audibly to another human being. It's what are they emitting? What is the vibration? And what are ultimately what are their actions? How are they acting? How are they responding to circumstances? And how are they sort of manifesting the very thing that they're depressed about?
Right. And this kind of gets to this whole point of us being careful about what we're thinking about. And that's why John and I have this commitment to help gay men find the kind of direction and purpose in their life that brings about the thoughts that will get them the things that they really want in life. We have found that really it comes down to 5 basic things that gay men really want in their life. They want that loving relationship. They want a financially stable relationship with money. They want to have a feeling of fitness. I'm not talking about being a god bod. I'm talking about just feeling good about your body and your overall well-being and health, both physically and mentally. I think that mental one is a very big one for our community. And then we want that lifestyle, the ability to enjoy our lives, whether that's having the brunch with friends on Sunday or going for a bike ride with a group of friends or going and seeing a movie. We want that kind of lifestyle that brings about that enjoyment. And we have found that the foundation for that is making sure that you have some sort of direction and purpose in your life. And that's part of the reason why we offer this 5 building blocks of a happy gay life as a free tool that people can use. So we want to thank you again for being a part of these Queer Money follow-ups. We'd love to know what your thoughts are about how you think you can create the real gay life that you actually love. And our Queer Money takeaway for you for this episode is to go download that 5 building blocks of a happy gay life by going to debtfreeguys.com/happy.
And then in the comments, let us know, what is it you're thinking about most, and to what extent do you think your thoughts are producing the results in your life, and whether or not you're happy with those results. Then join us tomorrow for Crib Money Follow-Up episode 44, where we cover Crib Money Podcast episode 44, where we talk with Shannon McClay, one of our favorite people in the personal finance space. This was a fun interview, because it was more of a conversation than it was interview. And we talk about how to go from flab to fab at the Financial Gym, a business that Shannon created. And then lastly, but not leastly, of course, always please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and set notifications on this channel so that you can join in on this discussion when we have them. That is all we have for you today. Thank you, and we will see you tomorrow.